The market streets were full of noise, alien voices shouting, machines buzzing, and footsteps echoing on the hot metal ground. People passed by quickly, eyes focused on their own problems. No one looked down, no one cared about the small cage. Near the garbage station, inside the cage, was something breathing. Weak, thin, and covered in dirt. It looked like a girl, but her face was hidden under messy purple hair and bruises. Her skin was pale and cracked. Her arms wrapped around her knees, shaking with cold and fear. She didn't speak, not anymore. She had tried to ask for help once. Many laughed. Some threw old food at her. Others just walked past like she was part of the trash. Her race was not respected. They were seen as weak, slow, and dirty. No one wanted to help someone like her. She didn't even remember her real name anymore. The guards near the cage were big and loud. They called her Creep and Thing. They made jokes and laughed about how long she would last without food, each time she moved too much. They kicked the bars of the cage. She learned to stay. Still, like a ghost. Then one day, a shadow stopped beside the cage. It didn't move like the others. It just stood there, silent. She slowly looked up, afraid it would be another cruel face, but it was different. A human stood there, tall and quiet. He had kind eyes, darker skin, and a simple jacket that looked dusty from travel. He didn't say anything. He just looked at her, really looked, not with hate, not with disgust, but with something soft, something that made her chest feel tight. Then, without a word, he bent down and pulled something from his bag, a small, warm piece of bread and a folded blanket. He placed them beside the cage, not touching her, not forcing anything, and then he left. She stared at the bread for a long time, afraid it might be a trick, but the smell was real. Warm, fresh. Her stomach screamed. Her hands shook as she reached out and grabbed it. She stuffed it into her mouth, crumbs falling everywhere. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, she felt warmth inside her, not just from the bread, but from the act itself. She didn't understand why the human helped her, but it broke something inside her, and her eyes filled with tears. The next day, he came again, this time with clean water and another blanket. The guards laughed at him, said, "Why waste time on a piece of trash like that?" But he didn't argue. He just set the items down and left again. She started waiting for him each day. She didn't know his name, but she started calling him the warm man in her mind. When she felt cold or scared, she thought of his eyes, those eyes that didn't look at her like she was dirt. Then something changed. On the fourth day, the human didn't leave after placing the food. He stood up and looked at the guards. "How much for her?" he asked. They laughed loudly. "She's not for sale." One said, "Who'd buy garbage?" Another joked, but the human didn't laugh. His voice was firm. "I'm not joking," he said. "I'll take her." The guards looked confused, then curious. "You serious?" One of them asked. The human nodded. "She doesn't belong in a cage," he said quietly. "No one does." The girl held her breath. Her heart was beating fast. Faster than it had in a long time. Was this real? Was someone really trying to take her away from this place? One of the guards shrugged and pulled out a data pad. "Fine, sign the release form. She's yours, but no refunds," he said with a smirk. The human pressed his finger on the pad. A beep sounded. The cage clicked open. She didn't move. Her body was frozen. Scared, confused, he crouched beside her, holding out his hand, not touching her, just offering it. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now." Her eyes locked with his, and something deep inside her broke open hope. It hurt to move, but she reached out and placed her hand in his, and just like that, she stepped out of the cage into the light, into a world that had never been kind, but now held one person who was. The guards didn't care. The crowd didn't notice. But the girl felt like something powerful had just happened. One simple act, one human, one piece of bread. And her life had begun again. The ship was quiet, the walls were clean. The air smelled fresh, and soft lights glowed gently. The girl sat on the edge of a small bed, wrapped in a blanket that still held warmth. Her body still hurt, but the pain was no longer her biggest fear. Her eyes kept moving to the corner of the room, checking for hidden threats, habits learned from the cage. From years of being watched and kicked, her hands were shaking. She didn't know if she belonged here, or if this was just another trick, another dream that would end in screams. Then, the door slid open and the human entered. He was holding a cup of warm soup and a small towel. He smiled when he saw her awake. "You're safe here," he said gently, and walked over. Placing the cup beside her, she didn't take it right away. She watched his hands, his face, searching for signs of danger, but he only stepped back, giving her space. "Take your time," he said. "No one will hurt you now." The girl stared at him. Her lips trembled. "Why?" she whispered. Her voice was rough, unused, like broken glass. The man knelt down, resting on one knee, "Because someone should have helped you long ago." He said, "You didn't deserve what they did." His voice wasn't loud, but it was full of something she didn't recognize. Honest. He wasn't lying, not like the others, not like the ones who smiled and threw stones. She picked up the cup slowly and took a small sip. The warmth slid down her throat, and she felt tears rise again. Her body was still broken, but something inside her was healing. Little by little, the next few days passed quietly. The human didn't force her to talk. He just brought her food, showed her how to use the cleaning unit, and gave her soft clothes. He let her sleep, let her breathe, let her exist. But each time he left the room, she watched the door, afraid it might never open again. Afraid he might forget her like everyone else did. Then one morning, he surprised her. He brought a small gift, a simple comb. He sat a few steps away and said, "Would it be okay if I help brush your hair?" Her hands clenched, her heart pounded. But then, slowly, she nodded. He moved carefully, gently, brushing through the knots and dirt. His touch never hurt, never rushed. He didn't flinch at the bruises or scars. He didn't ask how she got them. When he finished, she looked in the small mirror he gave her for the first time. She saw something different, a person, not just a thing. Later that day, he brought her to the ship's common room. She hesitated at first, but followed him. Her bare feet felt the smooth floor, strange and soft under her skin. He showed her a screen, played a video of Earth. "This is where I come from," he said. "Maybe one day you'll visit it with me." She stared at the trees, the water, the sky so blue it hurt her eyes. "It looks safe," she said. He smiled. "That's the goal." The next time they went to the market, he took her with him. He told her it was her choice. But she nodded. She wanted to try, wanted to see if the world had changed. They walked side by side. But the moment the crowd saw her, the whispers began. "That's her." Someone said, "The cage girl. She's with a human now." Another voice scoffed. "He must be mad." The words hit her like ice. She stopped walking. Her hands shaking, she looked down, wishing she could disappear. But the human turned, stepped between her and the crowd. His voice was calm, but firm. "She is under my protection," he said. "Show respect, or walk away." The crowd paused, uncertain. It was rare to see a human defend someone like her, especially so boldly. Lyra, the name she had chosen for herself only yesterday, felt something strange pride. Not because she was protected, but because someone believed she was worth protecting. They finished their shopping quietly. And on the way back, she asked him, "Why didn't you walk away like the others?" He looked at her and said, "Because I couldn't." She didn't speak after that. But when they reached the ship, she reached out and touched his hand gently. Just for a second, It was her way of saying thank you. And he understood that night. As she lay in her warm bed, her fingers touched the edge of the blanket he gave her, and she smiled for the first time in a long time. No one had to see it. It was hers, a small piece of hope, quietly blooming in the dark. She was still afraid, still unsure, but now she had one reason to believe the world wasn't only pain, because he didn't look away. The sun over the trade colony was always harsh, burning through the sky like it wanted to dry every bit of mercy from the land. Lyra sat near the ship's window, wrapped in her new blanket, watching the dusty world outside. She didn't know why, but her chest felt tight, like something big was coming. The human, whose name she now knew was Jace, was speaking with someone at the station terminal. She couldn't hear them, but she could feel the tension in the air. It wasn't anger, it was something deeper, something serious. Earlier that day, Jace had looked at her with kind but steady eyes. "Lyra," he had said, "I'm going to make this official." She didn't understand what he meant at first. She already lived in his ship, ate his food, and slept in a soft bed. What else was left to give? But he had explained right now. In the system's eyes, she was still unclaimed property, not a person. The idea hurt, but she didn't cry. "Not this time." "You mean? I'm still owned by them?" she asked quietly. Jace nodded, his voice low. "Yes, but not for long." Now, through the window, she watched as he argued with two officials. One of them was a thick-skinned alien with too many medals on his chest. The other was a bored clerk tapping on a datapad. Jace was holding a paper, old style, something rare and serious. It wasn't a simple trade form. This was a legal claim of guardianship, a contract that would officially give Lyra freedom under his protection. Inside the ship, Lyra couldn't sit still. She paced slowly, her bare feet making no sound. Her heart beat faster with each minute. This was real. This was happening. Then the door hissed open, and Jace walked in. His face was calm, but she saw the sweat on his brow. "It's done," he said, holding out the paper. She stepped closer, unsure. Her fingers touched the edge of the form. She could see her name, written in bold letters, Lyra. No last name, but it was hers. "This makes you free," Jace said softly. "They can't take you, sell you, or hurt you anymore." Lyra's legs gave out, and she dropped to her knees. She wasn't crying, not at first. Her body simply stopped moving, like the moment was too big for her to carry. Jace knelt beside her, his hand hovering near her shoulder. "Not touching, you're safe now," he said again, voice steady. Then came the tears, hot and heavy, falling onto the floor. "No one ever signed anything for me," she whispered. "Not even when I was born." Jace looked down at her and said, "Then today, the universe finally fixed a mistake." Later that evening, Lyra held the paper in both hands, staring at her name over and over again. It was proof she existed, proof she mattered. She didn't need chains to remind her of the past anymore. Jace had gone into the kitchen unit to make something simple: boiled grain with sweet fruit paste. Lyra didn't know the names, but she liked the taste. He always remembered what she liked, even if she never asked. While he cooked, Lyra walked quietly into the mirror room, the small washroom with clean white lights. She looked at her reflection. Her face was still marked, but not broken. Her hair was brushed. Her eyes were clearer. She whispered to the mirror, "I'm not a thing. I'm not trash. I'm Lyra." And for the first time, she believed it. That night, Jace brought her a small box. "I was saving this for a better moment. But maybe this is it," he said. She opened the box and found a thin metal band inside, smooth and silver. "What is it?" she asked, curious. "It's an identity bracelet," he explained. "It has your name, and it's synced with the ship's system now. Everything that belongs to you is protected under your name." Lyra stared at the band, afraid to touch it. "It's mine." He nodded. Yours only. She reached out and slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. It clicked softly, then glowed with a gentle blue light. The name Lyra appeared on it, and she gasped. It knows me, she said, wonder in her voice. It really knows me, Jace smiled, leaning back in his chair. Yes, and from now on, everyone else will too. That night, she didn't flinch when the lights dimmed. She didn't cry when the silence came. Instead, she laid in bed, the bracelet glowing gently beside her, and the paper tucked under her pillow like a treasure. She had no idea what her future would look like. But now she had one, and it all started because one human refused to look away, refused to walk past, refused to treat her like trash. He had signed a piece of paper, but to her, it was more than ink. It was a promise, a beginning, and Lyra, once a nameless creature in a cage, now had something precious. She had a name, a place, and someone who believed she mattered. The ship hummed softly as it drifted through space. The stars outside the window sparkled like silent watchers. Lyra sat curled up on the floor, her bracelet glowing gently. Her fingers moved over it again and again, tracing the letters of her name. Lyra, 4 letters, but to her, they were more valuable than gold. Jace sat across from her, legs folded, watching quietly. Do you know what your name means? He asked softly. She looked up, shaking her head. I picked it from your storybook, she whispered. The girl with silver eyes and brave heart. Jace smiled. That's right, he said. She was small, but she faced great darkness, and still chose to protect others. Lyra looked down. I'm not brave like her, she said, voice low. I ran, I cried, I begged. I wasn't strong. Jace leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. You survived, he said. That takes more strength than you know. Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away, for she didn't want to cry every time he was kind. But her heart was still learning what kindness felt like, and it was overwhelming that day. Jace took her to a part of the ship she hadn't seen yet, the garden room. Inside were plants from Earth, growing inside small glass pods. The air smelled sweet and green. This is where I come when I need to breathe, he said. I thought you might like it. Lyra walked slowly, her fingers brushing the leaves. There, alive, she whispered. Like me, she sat beside a small tree and closed her eyes. For the first time, she felt calm, not afraid of sudden noise or pain. That evening, Jace showed her something new. I want you to have a voice that others can hear, he said. He gave her a small translator pin, designed for those who had trouble speaking Galactic Common. It'll help when we go out, he explained. You won't have to hide behind me. She held the pin like it was made of light. I can talk, she asked, and they'll listen. He nodded. And this time, they'll understand you. The next day, they returned to the market, her bracelet on one wrist, the translator pin glowing on her collar. People noticed, some whispered, some stared, but this time she didn't shrink. Back she stood beside Jace, head slightly raised, at a clothing stall. The vendor, a tall alien with wide yellow eyes, glanced at her. Bet the cage girl, he muttered, before Jace could respond. Lyra stepped forward. Her voice was soft, but clear. I'm Lyra now, she said, and I choose my own clothes. The vendor blinked, confused, then looked away. Jace smiled, proud and quiet. Back on the ship, Lyra looked through the clothes. She had picked simple things. Soft fabric, loose sleeves, pale colors. Not beautiful to most, but to her, they were perfect. Later, she stared into the mirror again. She no longer saw the nameless creature from the cage. She saw someone with a name, someone who had chosen it herself. Lyra, she said aloud, that's me, that night. Something new happened. She had a nightmare. But this time, she didn't scream. She woke up sweating, her hands shaking, but she didn't hide. She walked to the common room where Jace was reading. He looked up, Concerned? Bad dream? He asked. She nodded, sat beside him, and leaned gently against his arm. He said nothing. Only placed a blanket over her shoulders and kept reading. I was back in the cage, she whispered. But this time, I could speak. He looked at her. What did you say? She paused, then smiled a little. I said my name. He nodded. That's all you need sometimes. Days passed, and each one brought small changes. Lyra began asking questions, exploring new rooms, eating more, sleeping better. She laughed. Once, and it startled both of them, Jace dropped his cup, and she covered her mouth. Afraid she did something wrong, but he just laughed too. I think that's the best sound this ship's ever heard. He said. Her smile was shy, but real. Later, she asked him something she had feared for days. What if someone tries to take me again? Jace looked at her, his expression serious. Then they'll find out I'm not someone they want to fight. She believed him, but more importantly, she believed in herself, because Lyra was no longer a number, no longer a silent shadow. She was a name, a voice, a soul. She was a girl worth remembering, and now she remembered herself. The stars didn't care who you were. They just watched, silent and cold. Lyra had learned that early in life she once believed the whole universe hated her. But now, for the first time, she wasn't completely sure. Life aboard the ship had become a new kind of normal. Jace had given her space, time, and protection. He never asked too many questions. Never forced her to talk about the past. But Lyra remembered every day. Still, she wanted to try again. Face the world, not just hide from it. I want to go out, she said one morning. Her voice was firm, even though her hands were shaking. Jace looked up from the ship's console, surprised but calm. Anywhere special? He asked. Lyra took a breath. The same market, I want to walk through it. Alone, he didn't smile, not right away. Instead, he nodded slowly. I'll stay nearby, just in case, he said. But I won't stop you. She wore a plain gray dress, simple but clean. Her bracelet was still on her wrist, glowing gently. And the translator pin blinked at her collar, ready to give her voice. She stepped off the ship. Her boots soft on the dusty ground. The air was thick, full of sounds and smells she had once feared. But now, she faced it with steady steps. The market hadn't changed. The same vendors stood behind the same stalls. The same smells of oil and spice filled the air. But the moment she stepped into the open street, the whispers began. That's her. Someone muttered, the slave girl. No, not anymore. Another voice replied. She's with that human now. She should have stayed in the cage. Someone spat. Trash like her doesn't belong here. The words stabbed like knives. Sharper than any blade, her heart pounded, but she didn't stop walking. She passed a group of children who pointed and laughed. One of them threw a small stone. It hit her leg, not hard, but enough to remind her of everything she tried to forget. She turned and looked at them, her voice steady through the translator. I am not trash, she said. I am not yours to break. The children froze, then ran, laughing nervously. She kept walking, her head high, but her chest ached. The world still saw her as less. Still believed she didn't belong. But then, she saw a small figure in the corner, young alien girl sitting beside a trash bin. Knees to chest, bruises on her arms, eyes hollow with fear. Lyra froze, her heart stopped. That was her, just weeks ago. Without thinking, she walked over and knelt down. The little girl looked at her, flinching, expecting to be hit or yelled at. But Lyra reached into her bag and pulled out a wrapped piece of fruit bread. It's sweet, she said softly. You can have it. The girl didn't move at first, but then slowly reached out and took it. Her eyes filled with tears. Lyra smiled gently. You're not nothing, she whispered. Don't forget that. Behind her, angry voices rose. One of the market guards had noticed her kneeling. "Hey, that's the human's pet," he growled. "What's she doing here?" Lyra stood slowly, turning to face him. The guard stepped forward, tall and heavy, eyes filled with disgust. Jace appeared before the guard could take another step. He didn't raise his voice, didn't even touch his weapon, but his presence was strong like a wall. "She's not your concern," Jace said, voice low and dangerous. "If you touch her, you answer to me." The guard hesitated, then stepped back, muttering, "Keep your trash on a leash." Jace didn't respond, but his eyes said enough. The guard walked away. His pride bruised. Lyra turned to Jace, her voice tight. "I wanted to do it on my own." Jace nodded. "And you did," he said. "But that doesn't mean I won't stand with you." Back on the ship, Lyra sat in silence. Her hands were still trembling, but she didn't cry. Instead, she stared out the window, the stars looking less cold now. "Will it always be like this?" she asked. "Will they always hate me?" Sat beside her. "Some will," he said honestly. "But not all." She looked at him. "Then I'll keep going," she whispered. "Even if they hate me, I'll keep walking." Jace smiled. "That's what makes you strong." The world still hated her, but she didn't hate herself anymore, and that made all the difference. The ship was quiet again, humming gently as it floated above the dusty trade world. Lyra was alone for the first time in days. Jace had gone to get parts from a nearby station. "Just a quick trip," he said. "I'll be back in an hour." Lyra nodded and smiled when he left, but deep down she was nervous. She had never stayed alone on the ship before. Not since she came here. Still, she told herself she could handle it. She wasn't the same girl from the cage. Not anymore. She made tea, just like Jace had taught her. Then sat near the ship's main door, reading one of his old storybooks. The words were still hard sometimes, but she was getting better. One page at a time, one line at a time. But then she heard a soft thump outside, followed by a faint hiss of metal. Her heart jumped. She stood up slowly and walked to the ship's monitor. 3 figures stood just outside the airlock. They weren't part of station security. They wore dark coats and carried stun rods. Thieves, or worse. One of them spoke, voice muffled through the outer com. "We know she's in there. Open up, little girl." Lyra froze. Her body wanted to hide, to shrink back like she always did, but something stopped her this time. A voice inside her said, "No." They banged on the hatch again, louder. "That human's not here, is he?" "Good. Then we'll take you now. Finish what they started." She backed away from the door and looked around the room. Her eyes found a drawer where Jace kept a small defense kit, non-lethal stun tools, smoke beacons, signal flares. Her fingers hesitated, then reached in and grabbed a small baton. Her hands shook as she activated it, a soft blue spark buzzing at the tip. "I don't have to win," she whispered to herself. "I just have to survive." The ship rocked suddenly. The thugs had forced their way in through the maintenance hatch. One dropped down, landing hard on the floor. He grinned when he saw her. "There you are," he said. "Come quietly, and we won't break you much." Lyra stepped back, her grip tight on the baton. She didn't speak, she didn't beg. Instead, she remembered what Jace told her weeks ago. Use their weight against them. Don't be faster, be smarter. The thug charged, laughing, but Lyra ducked low, slid to the side, and jabbed the baton into his leg. The spark hit, and he screamed. Dropping to his knees, another man entered, swinging a stun rod. Lyra jumped back, barely missing the strike. Her foot caught on the edge of the table, and she fell. But she rolled quickly and grabbed a signal flare. She threw it across the room, and it exploded with blinding light. The 2 thugs shouted and covered their eyes. Lyra stood again, chest heaving, bruises forming already, but she didn't stop. She hit the panel near the wall and activated the security beacon it would send. A message straight to Jace's comm and alert nearby patrols. One of the thugs shouted. She called for help. The third figure, the biggest of them all, grabbed her wrist. His grip was iron. Lifting her off the ground, "You're just a weak little thing," he snarled. "You were born to be broken." Lyra looked into his eyes, full of hate, and she said, "Not anymore." She stabbed the baton into his side. Full force, he roared and dropped her, crashing into the table behind him. Her knees hit the floor hard, but she crawled backward just as the main door slid open with a hiss. Jace burst in, weapon raised, eyes wide with fury. "Get away from her." The thugs turned to run, but it was too late. Patrol officers stormed in seconds later, weapons drawn. Within minutes, the attackers were restrained and dragged out. Cursing as they went, Lyra sat on the floor, breath coming in sharp gasps. Jace rushed to her, kneeling down. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice shaking. She looked at him, her lips trembling. "They came for me," she said, "but I didn't run. I didn't freeze." He placed his hands on her shoulders, eyes full of pride and fear. "You fought back," he whispered. "You held on." She nodded slowly. "I was scared, but I remembered your voice. I remembered that I have a name." Jace closed his eyes for a moment, overwhelmed. Then he said, "I'm sorry I left you alone." Lyra shook her head. "No. Don't be," she said. "If you hadn't, I would have never known I could fight." Later, after the patrols were gone and the ship was quiet again, Lyra stood in front of the mirror. Her lip was bleeding, her arm bruised, but her reflection was strong, steady, alive. She whispered, "I am Lyra. I'm not weak, not anymore." And the mirror showed her a girl who believed it, finally. The stars were no longer just cold lights in the sky to Lyra. Now they were possibilities, roads, and silent witnesses to her rebirth. She stood on the deck of Jace's ship, staring at the distant worlds beyond the viewport. Her hands were steady now, not shaking like before. Her heart still held scars, but it beat with strength. It had been 3 weeks since the attack. Jace had tightened security, but he hadn't tried to lock her away. He respected her freedom, trusted her strength, the patrol captain who came after. The incident had asked many questions. Why was a human protecting an ex-slave girl? What made her important enough to risk so much? Jace had only said one thing, because someone had to see her as a person. Before she forgot she was one. Word spread. Rumors turned into whispers, whispers into stories. Lyra became something rare, living proof that not all the broken stay. Broken, Jace received messages from other humans and aliens across the sector. Some wanted to offer support. Others wanted to know how to help others like her. One message changed everything. It came from a small colony station known for its poverty and abandoned younglings. "Please," the message said, "can you help our girls? Some of them are just like her." Jace showed the message to Lyra. "What do you think?" he asked. "We can ignore it, or we can go." Lyra didn't hesitate. "Let's go," she said. "If someone had come for me back then, I wouldn't have waited so long to live." Their ship landed on the dusty surface of the colony 3 days later. The air smelled of rust and sadness. Children watched from behind crates, hollow-eyed and silent. Lyra stepped out first. Her presence caused a stir. Some recognized her from the vids. Others just saw her as another outsider. But then, she knelt beside a small child with bruises and offered her a blanket and fruit bread, just like Jace once did for her. That small act rippled across the colony. It told everyone one quiet truth. Someone cared. Over the next few days, Jace and Lyra worked with locals to build a tiny sheltora place with clean water, soft beds, and real food. Nothing fancy, just safety, just kindness. Lyra sat with the girls every evening, listened to them, taught them how to speak with the translator pin, how to comb their hair, how to draw stars on paper, and for the first time, she felt something she never expected: purpose. She wasn't just surviving now, she was helping, changing lives. Giving back what she had been given. One night, a small alien girl with large eyes and no name sat beside her and asked, "Why are you helping us?" Lyra smiled, "Because one day someone gave me a blanket and bread," she said, "and it saved my life." The girl blinked, confused. "That doesn't sound like a lot." Lyra looked up at the stars. It was everything. Jace stood nearby. Watching her with quiet pride, he had seen her at her lowest, and now he was seeing her at her brightest later. As they packed supplies for the next group of children, Lyra turned to him. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, "stopping for me that day?" Jace laughed softly. "No, not even for a second." She tilted her head. "Why me, though? There were so many others." He paused, then said, "Because you looked at me with eyes that still wanted to live, even when everything else was broken." Lyra didn't reply. She just hugged him, quick and light, but full of meaning. He smiled and didn't say a word, letting the moment speak for itself. When they returned to their ship, more messages had come in, stories of others needing help. Lyra sat at the desk and replied to each one, not as a victim, but as someone who had power. Her name was known now, not as a sad tale, but as a symbol of survival. She was no longer the cage girl. She was Lyra, founder of the Ember Project, a small but growing effort to help forgotten children across the stars. And it all began because one human refused to ignore her, refused to walk past one kindness. A blanket, a piece of bread, a hand reaching into darkness. Now, that kindness lived in every girl Lyra saved, every voice that learned to speak again, every heart that dared to hope. She no longer needed to say, "I am Lyra," because the galaxy already knew.